today we're back on our shrouded impeller. If you guys watched the first video, it was just a stock prep operation that we did on our Heller CP6000. We had our stock held in our Shunk ML Flex 630 chuck, and all we really did was go in and put our 4 pull stud holes in so that for our next operation we'd be able to mount it to our Vero S pallet system. So at the end of our setup video, you saw us loading this part into the Vero S modules, and now we're ready to start making chips and begin our first roughing operation on this part. So for our very first operation, all we're doing is a simple 2D high-speed milling operation where we're removing about a 1/2 inch of stock from the top of the part. Now, rather than just use some 3-axis motion, what we're actually going to use is polar interpolation. So if you look inside of our tool path, you can see that under axis control, we have rotary axis control, and I have it switched to 3-axis and then rotate about Z. The motion that that's going to give us is what you see here on the screen. Our face mill is going to stay stationary while the part spins and the face mill works its way in toward the center of the part. Now, when processing a part like this, you want to start with the big tools and work your way down to the smaller ones. So we're starting with our 3-inch steel ram, and then we're going to get progressively smaller until our part really begins to take shape. Now, for our next operation, I needed to remove as much material as I could from between the blades as fast as I could. And the fastest way to remove material is with drilling. So I got a new drill in that has some PCD inserts on it, and I've never really used diamond inserts in an inserted drill before, so there was a little bit of a learning curve here. My first instinct with any inserted drill is to push it as hard as you can, make some big chips, and get the material out of there fast. So one of the problems we had is this part is over 10 inches tall. So we're going in with a 2 1/8 inch drill, and whenever we would get down to about the 6-inch mark, I started having trouble with chip evacuation. What we ended up with was, when we fed slower, we ended up with a lot of ribbons and a lot of stringers that were wrapping around the drill, also causing vibration issues. So what we ended up with was an advanced drill cycle, and we continued to feed the drill pretty hard. We just drilled to a 2-inch depth, then we pulled the drill completely out of the hole, stopped the drill, turned on coolant, reversed the spindle, let the ribbons and any chips that were stuck in the flutes blow off, and then we went back in the hole and took 1-inch depths. Now, once we had our holes drilled, that gave me a nice starter hole location for us to drop in with our 3/4 Core 5 end mill. Now, once again, we have pockets all around this part, so in order to make sure that our machine doesn't limit out, we're using polar interpolation again. That way our spindle can kind of stay in the same little area while the part moves around. Now, in this case, the reason we went in with our end mill first is because we were able to use a lot shorter tool, which is going to be a lot more rigid than some of the other tools that we're going to have to use later. Again, these pockets are 8 to 10 inches deep, so we want to make sure that we stay as rigid as possible for as long as possible. Now, after we used our end mill to get as deep as we could, which was 2 1/4 inches, we're going to come in with our 2-inch steel ram face mill, and we have this on a dampened tool holder. The dampen holder is going to allow us to go a lot deeper and remain a lot more rigid than we would with just a regular standard tool holder. The only problem we have is that this tool holder has a taper to it, so we have to make sure that as we're using this tool, we don't end up shanking out on our part. Now, once we have our pockets roughed out, we're going to bring our 3-inch steel ram shoulder mill back in, and we're going to start machining the outside profile of our part. Now, we need to make sure that during this roughing, we don't end up letting our spindle hit our table or our pallet, and that we're only making contact with the stock that we have on the part. Now, you can see for these operations, what we did is just some 3+2 tool path. We took a rotation, worked as much as we could, as deep as we could, then we rotate, do the same thing, and we rotate 8 times total until what we end up with is our part looking like this. So you can see some of the features starting to take shape on our outside profile, and this is the state that our part is currently in. Now, for almost every surface of this part, I'm leaving 100,000 stock. And the reason that I'm doing that is because as we start removing all this material, our part's going to have a tendency to want to warp and twist. Now, it's not a guarantee, but I wanted to make sure that we have enough stock on this part that we don't run into any issues later. All right, now, if we take a look at our part, you can see that the blades are actually twisted. So there's still material underneath this blade that we need to get to. I don't want a bunch of material in here for our finishing operations. I want that gone now. We also have a taper here on the hub floor, and I want to get all of that we can, get everything out of the corners that we can, because remember, we roughed out these pockets with a 2-inch shoulder mill. So for our next tool, we're going to come in with a 3/4 ball end mill. It's sticking out a mile, so it's probably not going to sound that great. And we're also going to be using the center of the ball to remove material. On parts like this, you are always going to hear tools screaming. It's just the nature of the beast. Now for these true 5-axis operations, what I've done is create one pocket tool path and then transform that around. That way we get the same output that we had when we roughed the pockets, which is essentially polar interpolation. The spindle is going to stay in what looks like about the same place, but the part's going to spin for each different orientation. Now there's a lot of different 5-axis tool paths I could have chosen for this operation, but before I even got started with writing the tool paths, I created a surface that will allow me to use the port tool path. So what I did is take all the surfaces on the inside of that impeller pocket and I offset them by 100 thousandths, so I have a nice port essentially that I'm able to rough my material from. All right, so if we take a look at our back plot here, it's going to look like our part is staying stationary and just our tools moving, but in reality there's going to be a lot of motion on the machine because it's not our spindle that's moving, it's going to be the part. So we're going to probably see a lot of motion where the head is swinging around, the part's rotating. It should be pretty cool. But you see, it's actually a beautiful tool path. Our tool's staying in contact with the part, we have a constant step down, and we're constantly tilting our axes to make sure that we're getting underneath these hard to reach areas. Now a lot of times with a part like this in the programming stage, you'll write some tool paths that just don't work out as well as you would have liked in the real world. Originally, you'll remember that I roughed the outside profile with the 3-inch steel ram face mill. My thought was I would come in with a 1/2-inch end mill next and get anything that the 3-inch face mill couldn't reach. Unfortunately, in practice, that ended up taking a lot longer than I wanted it to because we had a long 1/2-inch end mill that I ended up having to baby. So after seeing the way that worked out on the first rotation, I decided we were going to go in with our 2-inch steel ram, remove as much material underneath the part as we could, and we're going to use that same tool to remove as much of the profile material as we could. Then we're going to come in with a 1-inch steel ram, and then we'll use our 1/2-inch. So for removing the material underneath the part, I wrote a curved 5-axis tool path, and it's just going to work its way deeper and deeper, going all the way around the part. Now, one thing I want to point out is if you take a look at the orientation of the tool, you'll notice that I have it away from center. And this is because I want to make sure that the insert at the front of the tool is what's making contact. I want to make sure that it's not material going inside my cutter between the inserts. Essentially what this does is give our tool lead. Now you can see that what we have here is that tool's come in and remove the material between our pallet and our part. That way when we go in with our 2-inch steel ram, our 1-inch steel ram, and our 1/2-inch end mill, it doesn't even have to look at that area. And as I scroll through these tool paths, you can see what's happening. We're really starting to see some of the features of the part start to take shape. And as we keep making rotations, we get the same outcome. Just more and more of the part is becoming visible. So now that we have pretty much everything that we can reach roughed out, the only thing we have left to do is put our 4 little notches in on the flange of the part and enlarge these 4 holes. What's going to be really nice for our next operation is that this part was actually designed in metric. So these 4 holes actually line up perfectly to 4 holes that are in our pallet on our machine. That means I'm going to be able to make a really quick, dirty, and easy fixture for our next operation, which is going to be to rough the rest of the material on the backside and then begin the finishing of the part. All right, so now that we got our notches in, our 4 holes enlarged, we're done with our cutting. Let's get this thing out to our pallet pool and check it out. All right, so just to recap what we did here, we came in and we faced off all the excess material off the top of the part. Then we came in with our 2 1/8-inch drill and we just pre-drilled some holes in each of the pockets. And this was so that we could come in with our end mill and then our 2-inch face mill and rough out the majority of the material in here. After we had the pockets roughed out, we came to the outside diameter of the part and we started roughing all that excess away. We started with a 3-inch shell mill, then we worked our way down to a 2-inch and then a 1-inch and then a 1/2-inch. And you can see how it started revealing the external features of our part. We also came in and removed a lot of the excess material that was down here with our 2-inch dampened shell mill, and that enabled us to not have to come in here with the smaller tools. After getting the outside diameter of the part roughed out, we came back in and started with some full 5-axis tool path to machine away some of the material that was left in the undercut of the blades and the taper of the hub floor and the corners where we had material left over from our 2-inch shell mill. Now there are some features that we didn't show in this video, like these holes that we drilled and some of the deburring, a couple little finish passes or semi-finished passes, but you guys all know how to do that. It was all simple 3-axis work. If you guys like this video, please like, subscribe. We're absolutely going to be finishing this part, so I'll see you guys again soon. Peace.